freerevoltmedia.com.
Hey guys, this is Spike Cohen. The Liberty Revolt is founded on strategies to engage in the culture war and to protect the principles of individual liberty, private property, and limited government by developing a better understanding of history, political philosophy, as well as policies and their ramifications. Thanks for joining, and remember, you are the power.
They're back there in the studio today. We're trying to get some new talent on our soundboard. So they will be speaking with us a little bit while we're doing this, but for now it is just going to be us three really starting the conversation. So probably best to start this one off a little bit by defining our terms here. So across from me, I have two conservatives that are actually very different. Yes, fascist.
Well, yeah, according to the other
Hashtag Evan is an authoritarian.
So what, all authoritarians are fascist?
Yeah. Some are communists and some are Nazis.
Not all authoritarians are fascists, but all fascists are authoritarians.
Yeah, there we
it's
go.
kind of like the square and rectangles.
Well, I mean, how do you know I'm not a communist? They're also authoritarian.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what's the difference? But
there's a massive difference. But anyhow.
Yeah, I think it's really important to start this off by really discussing one of the big issues we have today in the American political landscape, which is such. It's a confusion over what these terms actually mean.
Mm-hmm.
We have such a myopic view of what politics is in America. You're either on the left, you're on the right.
Yeah.
But there's no distinguishing beyond that. So I, as an I call myself an anarcho-optimist, and I'll explain that in a second. I would fall on the same right-leaning category as Evan, despite the fact that he's an authoritarian and I'm not. So if you guys wouldn't mind just, Evan, we'll start with you. So. Well, what differentiates you from a standard conservative?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, if we want a better understanding of politics, we can't, as you said, we can't look at it from a single line perspective.
Exactly.
I always imagine it as, an X and a Y axis where, the X axis or the Y axis that goes up and down defines how conservative you are socially, and the Y axis that goes left to right. I may have gotten those backwards, but that axis defines how economically right-wing you are. So the more
up and down is authoritarian level,
yeah.
Right and left is economic freedom.
Yes.
Yeah. So that really introduces a lot of nuance to what, at least members of the Republican Party identify as conservative, because the Republican Party has members all around that spectrum. We have varying levels of, economic conservatism, social authoritarianism, and liberalism, for example. So, in some instances, like with Austin, he says that, well, I'm not even a conservative. That's how big the divide can be sometimes. But if you ask me, I identify myself as a right-wing populist. I don't really care if you call me authoritarian. I think conservatism.
Would you mind giving an analog as like someone in the mainstream that you would kind of identify, just to give the viewers kind of an idea of what you mean by that?
Donald Trump, Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri.
Gotcha. Tucker Carlson.
Carlson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think conservatism, to me, from the perspective of a populist, is the effort to make sure that nations have a core identity. And it's also an effort to make sure that nations have the most sovereignty as possible. Mm. So it's really all centered around what are the values of the community. The community should have strong values.
Yeah.
And we should orient national policy to protect the nation as a community
Yeah.
to enhance those values.
And so, Austin, what is it about what Evan just said that you disagree with that would make you say, no, I'm not really actually a conservative?
Yeah, because I think that conservatism on its base level is stating that government's job is to protect liberty from others encroaching it.
Yeah.
And anyone who wants to use the government to encroach on anybody's liberty isn't itself can't be conservative because it goes into the direct competition of what conservatives believe in. Because conservatism to me is the belief that government's job is to protect you from others encroaching, and that the conservative movement has been more of shrinking the role of government, not growing it, which people like DeSantis and the people
Ron DeSantis is another guy I forgot to mention.
Ron DeSantis
DeSantis
and
2024, by the way.
who continue to grow it. I think the best way to look at it, anybody knows history, look at Taft and look at Roosevelt. Taft was a conservative.
Teddy Roosevelt, not FDR.
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt was a what we'd call a populist nowadays.
Yeah,
Another
he was like a
another
progressive
good idol
conservative.
of mine, by the way.
Exactly.
I shilled for Teddy really hard in the presidential brackets.
I mean, there's a lot of people do really love Teddy, especially for the speak softly and carry a big stick kind of deal.
Right.
But when I look at something like that, to me, I don't necessarily see empire-esque expansion as something that would be considered conservative, because you would when it comes to American values, in my mind, when I hear conservative, I hear that to me speaks to the values, the culture, the traditions that really built up this country for what it was, which a part of that is staying away from empire building,
and you're talking about like Goldwater conservatism, which is we're going to shrink back into ourselves and we're going to work on shrinking our government and taking care of our people first, which is kind of had a big resurgence. I'm not a Goldwater conservative. I'm not a Reagan conservative. I am a what they call a neoconservative. A lot of people call me that, and I think it's the best descriptor of me.
Hashtag Austin is a neocon.
I think I'm a classical liberal, but I have a lot of neoconservative tendencies. And
are you more hawkish when it comes to
exactly? That's Jeb Bush, Nikki Haley, kind of situation for me.
Yeah, no, and so I think that one of the big things that the conservative movement of today is running into is that there's a big divide between the religious conservatives and your secular conservatives, especially when it comes down to the fact that a lot of people on the secular side of conservatism look at it and say, hey, look, our government isn't supposed to be, dictating moral values necessarily, but our government requires a strong moral value to get there. People want to make religion, kind of almost the law of the land. And I want to continue this when we get back, but you guys are listening to The Red Riff with the Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC. Sorry, this is like only the second episode I've ever actually had to be the quarterback.
Oh, no, you're doing great.
I'm gonna try to quarterback and then throw in my own input at times until we get.
I know you tend to you like to be the one who does most of the talkings, but you're doing pretty good right now.
Well, it's I like to do whatever it takes to make the show work. We are still on the live stream, so
we are on the live stream.
We are.
We have a full 2 people watching, so thank you guys. Thank you guys for joining us on today's show.
Austin is drinking Coca-Cola. Are you trying to remove whiteness from you? Coca-Cola doesn't want to be white.
There was a massive wad of gum just sitting right here.
Oh my gosh. It was probably the kid that was in here before.
But yeah, that's where Evan and I have our big clashes.
I want to dive.
After we get back on the radio, we can go a bit deeper into religion, and I can give you a good example of why the government should be present in society.
Yeah, no, and I'm going to broach a little bit more like why, we're in a situation where conservatives need to stop infighting, kind of deal, because if you guys can't even band together to stand against the truly great evil, because it's
right.
Well, and to be fair, we've been working in politics for like 2 or 3 years now, and we have the maturity to just ignore all that.
Yeah, that's what our show's about.
Yeah, so
that's exactly what Red Riff's about. Is we can disagree on ticky-tack things, But when we come down to it, we all know that government in itself is dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but it comes down to what do we think the role of the government actually should end up being? I personally, my stance on it is that the government's role is to facilitate, not to dictate.
Yeah.
It's the government's role when I wrong you, it's the government's role to come in and say no.
Yeah.
You know, like you owe he. Hello. Hello and welcome back to the Red Riff and the Liberty Revolt going at conservatism versus libertarianism. But first, we are starting off kind of dissecting a little bit what the difference is between, our various, I guess, religious sects of conservatism is. But more or less what needs to happen is we just need to get into the nitty gritty of why there is currently a divide between some conservatives and why that divide kind of needs to go away, because at the end of the day, this infighting among conservatives, and I'm not saying that it's anything too brutal, right? I'm not saying that it's anything wacky and crazy, but it is present between the religious and the secular conservatives. Yeah. And it causes a problem when you're trying to form up together to fight a common enemy kind of deal, because it's when you're nitpicking about the little tiny things, it almost ends up being as if people I'm not saying it's everybody, but people tend to let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Exactly.
Can we be blatantly honest?
Yeah.
Right now, and starting now, it's going to happen in these primaries that come in 22. Yeah. But in 2024, it's going to be a fight of what conservatism is. It's going to be a fight of what the Republican Party is, and you're going to see that branch really, that gap really wide.
Yeah. And we can use religion as an example. Now, the way I view religion and politics is, first and foremost, there are two main categories of politics. One is campaigning and organization of politics, and then the other is policy. Yeah. In other words, how do you get people elected? And then what do you do once you get people elected?
Exactly.
Now,
two different games.
Yeah. So for the first game, getting people there, I really don't think there's a lot of room for religion in that, because your main goal should only be to win.
Yeah.
Right. Because any Republican is going to be better than any Democrats, and even a more secular Republican in policy. Well, even a more secular Republican in policy is still going to do a lot more, at least indirectly, for Christianity in America than an openly atheist secular Democrats.
For instance, there was a whole group of people Republicans who refused to vote for Mitt Romney solely because he was a Mormon.
Yeah.
Which it absolutely baffles me. Because you didn't want to vote for a Mormon, you got a man who despised you on a deep root level.
Yeah. Now the other thing is, okay, what do you do once you get a Republican in? I think that is where you really insert Christian principles and religious principles, because as you talked about before the break, you mentioned that America was in some sense built on Christian principles, and there's a few quotes from the founding fathers. It may have been Adams. Don't quote me on that, Austin. Yeah. It may have been Adams who said that this Constitution was made only for moral people, and by moral he meant religious.
I believe that was Adams.
So,
yes, it was Adams.
I mean, if religion, specifically Christianity, is essential for the functioning of American society and essential for a very limited government that you and Austin want above all else, then religion is necessary. And if you see religion waning in, culture or policy, then it's a direct responsibility of the states to make sure that's encouraged and enforced, because it's essential for the functioning of America. So of course it's essential for the states. This is where the disconnect happens.
We agree all the way up that it is religion and morality of people that is so important and what made America great. But where we're forgetting is it's not government's job to force that.
Yes.
We have to have culture warriors. The issue is we've let too many political douches come in.
Sorry about
that. And literally become our culture warriors. Our president should not be a culture warrior.
So I want to address your quote, because the reason why John Adams says our Constitution requires a moral and just society, a religious society, is because if the society is not religious, the Constitution doesn't have any protections for that, because they know it is not the government's job. what the Constitution's job is to set the limits for the government, and it's our job as the people to have the moral virtues that would keep that government from running rampant. Because no matter what kind of restrictions you put on a government, having that monopoly on violence means that government at any time, if the right people are in there, is going to expand, because there's nothing to stop it from expanding. So you need the people that are in those positions to have some kind of moral grounding.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out, you mentioned religion more than you said Christianity, because at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily require Christianity, although you could say you prefer
specifically Christianity is a theological argument, and I'm going to hand it out to Vika to have that conversation.
Yeah. So, but what we do need to address is the fact that it is religion that ends up being important, because the role that religion plays in a society, and why it's so important, why you find it in every single culture, is because the religion is what sets the moral and ethical foundations for your community and your society.
And as you said, ideally, the government should be comprised of moral people.
Yeah.
So if we want moral people in the government, then there's no excuse to have moral people in the government not do moral things because they're afraid of how big the government may possibly get.
No, but there is a discussion, because remember that moral people will be in charge, but moral people will not always be in charge.
No.
Remember, any hammer you use is going to be directly handed to the immoral.
Exactly. So I want to directly address that. So, are you guys aware of what caused the public school system in America? It was the rift between the Protestant and the Catholic Church, right?
Okay.
So up until about the 1840s, all schools were private. There was no public schools, and most of those private schools were run by the Catholic Church in some way, shape, or form. And so the Protestants saw this as a problem, because in Catholicism, your number one loyalty, they thought, was to the Pope. The Pope came before country. Yeah. If the Pope told you to do something, that would cause a problem. So the Protestants said, hey, this is a big issue, right? We can't have these kids going into this school where they're learning that there is a force that they should listen to before our country, because that's going to potentially make them enemies of our country. So what did they do? They took over the school system. The Protestants put in place the public school system so that they could get these kids out of Catholic school and use the public school system, where most of the teachers at the time in the 1860s and 70s were Protestant, so they could push Protestant values. Well, 1910s, 1920s comes along, and what ends up happening?
Secularism?
Yeah, people realize that this public school system, when you have kids from the age of 5 to 18, all for 8 hours a day, you can brainwash them and create whatever you want out of it.
So wasn't that our responsibility as conservatives to make sure that we're the ones who have control over what they learn?
But no, our job is to make sure there's not a government school system.
Then the alternative is that the communists and the crazies come in and just do what we refuse to do.
No, the alternative is you dismantle the system that's causing the problem.
Yeah, what are the odds that's going to happen, though?
Then.
Yeah.
Well, okay, now though.
The public school system was a direct result of religious clash within our country that came because there was a disagreement between the style of Christianity that people thought should run our country. Yeah. And so what they missed was that it's not about the Christianity, it's about the morals of the people it's about the morals that are being taught. And through Catholicism and Christianity, I don't know, but it's pretty hard to come out with a different set of morals between the two.
And it's very true that your people are going to say our Constitution, and especially the Declaration, have a very deep and abiding, you have to have some level of religiosity in order to agree with those documents. This is why Democrats have such a hard time, especially really left-wing Democrats have a hard time respecting them, because it's built on that we were created by a creator, and that creator gives us the right.
Yes.
Yep. And they also know that you have to be religious to authentically follow it.
Yeah, if you believe that there is no all-powerful creator that bestowed upon you the right to self-defense.
So where do you get it?
Yeah, where do you get it? Well, that's from the government. That means the government can take it away. So when you remove the God as the foundation for your rights and say, no, these rights are above even the government because God's above government, something's going to take that place. It's going to be when you remove God, next man up takes that role, and that's government.
And this is the innate problem with populism and large government, because because there are some populists who are now starting to slip into anti-religiosity.
Yeah.
Because
not me.
Because not you, but the same people that
who?
You want to give the power to are going to end up handing.
Who are those some populists?
America in itself has gotten less and less religious every single year, and so what's going to happen? What is and we
but
know
who
that
are,
we know that
who are
basically
these populists who you cite that are
there's not
secularism?
there's not an overtly major populist right now that does it, but
Because
it's only
they all
a matter
believe in
of
God. They're all
time.
Christian.
It's only a matter of time before it happens because it happens to every movement. These secular.
I would say Donald Trump was not a religious man in the slightest.
But he still pushed religious values.
I'm sure
because he knew because that got cheers at his rallies.
And
I
also,
don't care what his motives are. He still doesn't.
Republicans can't win without him. But the base issue is that people who believe in government power, whether you claim to be a Christian or not, if you're holding government in control, that is holding a stance which is going to lead to people who don't care about God, who don't care about your individual moral values, and are going to force down onto you the values you despise. You can say we have to teach our children this, or we can't let our children. We can tell people all we want that you can't let your child be gay. That's the thing you can't do. But what's going to happen is another person is going to come in who doesn't hold the same values as you and tell you can't have your children if you teach them moral values. You can't teach your kids, and they're going to take your kids away.
Yeah, well,
the pendulum swings. And when you give government the power, other people take the power, and they will.
Thankfully, we have a very fine balance that benefits conservatives who do want to push cultural issues because we have checks and balances at the end of the day.
Those checks and balances have done a great job.
Well, I mean, hey, Trump pushed a lot of culturally conservative things like the immigration moratorium, or no, not the moratorium.
Allowed to have a fully automatic gun?
No, but I'm talking about that's another thing. But I'm talking about the Remain in Mexico policy, for example. Yeah. Trump passed it through executive order. That's an example of Trump pushing the line on immigration, stuff that prior Republican presidents were super moderate on.
Yeah.
Him pushing a very populist idea.
Well, that's a protected right of his as the head of the Home Department of Homeland Security.
But then what happened was that Biden promptly ignored it.
Yeah.
But then the Supreme Court reinstated it. So effectively, we still have Trump's immigration system.
It's an executive order. It takes Biden sitting down for 30 seconds to write a new one and pass it.
Yeah, no. So
it's not a benefit of populism that Biden is an absolute incompetent moron.
I think that it's kind of. I don't think I can look at the way our government has expanded to the extent it has and say that the checks and balances have worked even in the slightest.
That's right.
The Supreme Court now acts. I have a question. Do you think it's okay that police departments investigate their own wrongdoings?
I think we should.
You think it should be done third party?
I think we should be not as scrutinizing of police departments because it's more important for them to have the full capabilities.
That wasn't the question. My question is: a police officer is involved in a shooting, like kill somebody. Would you rather that police department investigates it or a third party, independent third party investigates it?
I don't really care either which way.
Okay.
And oftentimes, if we do hold police officers completely accountable, that just makes other police officers more afraid to do their job. And criminals now realize they can take advantage of the cops because they're scared of being held accountable.
Is the cop being held accountable because they did something wrong or because they did something right?
I mean, investigations in themselves don't.
I think asserting that by holding police officers accountable for wrongdoing, that's going to make if the problem. If I walk into a police station and I ask a police officer, hey, are most of the police officers in this station good? They're going to say, yeah, 99% of us are good. And then I go, okay, so are you able to report the bad things that the bad police officers do? And they'll most likely say, no, if you do that, you're going to get in trouble. Well, then how are you going to be able to tell me that this police station is mostly good people if the mostly good people cannot actually report people for doing the wrong thing? The Supreme Court is the same issue. The Supreme Court is the government looking at the government and saying the government either did something wrong or didn't do something wrong.
The issue is that our founding fathers assumed that
they didn't need to explain jurisprudence.
They assumed that any kind of
jurisprudence kind of came on later.
Well, what's the word?
It's always been there.
Aspiration would check aspiration, right? That's what we assumed would happen. The founding fathers had no idea the legislature would literally drop to its knees and give away all its power. That's the problem here, is the legislature stops doing their job of holding checks and balances. I don't think necessarily the checks and balances don't work. The issue is the checks and balances have not been going on for 50 plus years.
How's the Senate doing right now, though? Because right now the Senate has effectively blocked $15 federal minimum wage. It's blocked election reform. It's blocked police reform. It's blocked a few other things that are like radical far left nonsense. So I think that
police reform is not radical far left nonsense. Police reform absolutely needs to happen, and I love police officers. I respect the job.
I was just saying that is an example of the. I'm just saying it's an example recently of the Senate acting like a check.
That's okay. Fair enough. But are you guys aware? And I actually want to ask this question when we get back. Okay. So I'm going to ask about FDR and the Supreme Court. So thank you all for joining us on the Red Riff and Liberty Revolt. We will be right back after these messages.
Right when we come back, I have an ad read I need to do really quick.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I'll pass it over.
But no,
what's the product so I can?
Pure Tech. They're a hydraulic hose provider.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, honestly, if a policeman does a bad thing, then I really wouldn't care as much as a policeman wanting to do the right thing and not being able to, because they're too constrained by overreactions to what bad policemen do. Well, and what happens is that these reports get politicized, and these reports just get overblown by the far left to where the good policemen are completely incapacitated.
Well, there's a balance that needs to be achieved, but I don't think that balance is.
Here goes Evan again, being scared to do the right thing because he's scared of what the left's going to do.
Well, I think preventing the left from doing the wrong thing is the right thing. Even if what we do as conservatives isn't the completely right thing, it's going to be a lot better invariably than what the left wants to do, because the left always does the wrong thing.
What is Ben doing? I appreciate it.
What? Ben who?
Ben Shapiro's on the radio right now. He's doing a commercial.
Oh, nice.
I would much rather be on the radio with Ben Shapiro than Alex Jones. Thank you.
Yeah.
Incited the erection?
What?
Excuse me?
Huh?
Chuck Schumer said he incited what erection?
Ooh, Freudian slips. They're always fun, especially in politics.
He incites a lot of my erections, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, what was I leading going into?
Something about FDR.
Oh yeah, the
judicial review probably. So.
Yes, what he did to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Or at least tried to do.
No, what he did.
He didn't.
He did.
He failed on some things, but he got a lot of crap done.
No, he made the Supreme Court his bitch. He said, if you guys don't vote the way I want you to vote, I'm going to pack it. And then
he did it.
The four horsemen. So are you guys aware of the justices that were on the court at the time?
No.
They were known as the four conservative horsemen. Like they were the four. These Supreme Court justices. What? Oh yeah. So they were known as the four horsemen, and they shut down everything FDR tried to do. And so he finally just said, "Screw you! I'm gonna add 6 more justices." And they stopped voting against stuff like the Green New Deal and stuff like that, or the New Deal and everything like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a chair, bud?
No, it's not.
Are you gonna stand the whole time?
Mm-hmm. Incredible.
Hello and welcome back to the Red Riff with the Liberty Revolt. We are discussing conservatism and libertarianism, and right before the break, I wanted to say one quick thing. I was bringing up, Evan was talking about the checks and balances, and I was just going to bring up how a lot of the problems we're seeing first and foremost started with the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, but bled into the presidency of FDR during the Great Depression. And during that time, following Hoover and everything like that, the Supreme Court was the most conservative Supreme Court that's ever existed, right? Mm-hmm. On it was what I colloquially call the four horsemen of the conservative apocalypse. These guys refused any and all measures by FDR to do stuff. And so FDR had a major problem with it. And he said, hey, if you guys don't, let me push through some of my policies here and stop deeming them unconstitutional, I'm going to whip you around the back of the head with a hydraulic hose. Mm-hmm. It came down to the fact that he had a friend who was really good at producing hydraulic hoses. And Austin, I think you know a little bit about this, friend.
Yeah, we want to give a quick thank you to PureTech North Valley, the location. Where they're the leading mobile hydraulic house. They're the number one hydraulic hose provider in the Denver. I was just so stunned at how great that transition was. Go there for all your hydraulic needs, or they'll go there for a call 24/7, 7 days a week. They'll come with a full mobile workshop that's ready to set up, ready to go, so they don't interrupt your day too much. PureTech North Valley is located at 150 West 60th Place, Denver, Colorado. The phone number is 303-487-0573. Again, it's 303-487-0573. Thank you, PureTech.
Yeah, give them a call, guys. I just want to remind you, all of our advertisers on this station are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people that most likely share your values. Give them a call if you want to support businesses that share your values and your ideas.
Most likely?
Most likely.
Okay.
Most definitely. So, but yeah, so I just wanted, because the assertion that checks and balances have worked, I just wanted to point out, the president overpowered the Supreme Court because he wanted specifically unconstitutional policies put through. You look at what President Nixon did in '72 by taking us off the gold standard, which completely has destroyed our economy at this point. It has obliterated it. And that was in direct conflict with the Constitution that says currency must be backed by gold. We had a 1 to 35, 1 ounce of gold was worth $35, and he got pissed off because people kept calling him on it. So, he took us off the gold standard. At that point, the checks and balances failed to the point where our government was turned into an unstoppable monster. And I assert that there is really no way to keep this thing in check outside of a strong community that has strong cultures, has strong morals and values. But the unfortunate part is you are not allowed to enforce that through violence. And so we have to cultivate this some way, shape, and form.
I don't think I ever proposed violence.
No, but anytime you would suggest that the government get involved with anything, get involved with any form of regulation, any form of moral regulation, any form of laws, I'm off.
No.
I need to be back on.
I can hear you.
So we got, anytime you involve the government, you are inherently involving violence. You are inherently involving force. And I think that the government has demonstrated over and over and over and over and over again that every single power we give it will eventually be turned into a hammer against yourself. Yeah. Like, look at what Harry Reid did in 2012, getting rid of the veto, or not
the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations.
Exactly. So
yeah, the only way government can enforce something is through the barrel of a gun. Yes. There's no other way to do it. Yes. Whether you're promoting religiosity, or you're promoting secularism, whether you're promoting what we believe is good or what you believe is bad, it's at the barrel of a gun, and that in itself is a violation of basic constitutional principles.
Well, or they can just take away funding, or they can increase litigation costs. They can disincentivize certain actions by lawsuits.
Yeah, but what we're getting at
is, how is that enforced? That's forced by the barrel of a gun.
Yeah, so
now it's forced by taking money away.
So I guess what I want to get at here is that, we talk about, especially when it comes down to conservatives that don't necessarily agree that the government should be gone entirely, which is most conservatives, I should say. You run into the issue of, you have a force that necessarily requires some level of spiritual, moral foundation in order to keep in check. That spiritual, moral foundation is actively being destroyed, eroded, and attacked by a malicious force. And at the same time, no one within this apparatus is actually taking any steps, including people that you would think would be on your side, are taking any steps at all to prevent what is going on. Like I said, the Nixon removal of the gold standard led to $30 trillion of debt, because no longer did we actually have to back our dollar by anything other than hopes and dreams and a promise that, hey.
What does that have to do with Christianity?
So what it has to do with Christianity is this idea that there is some way to actually impose Christianity through a government in some way. Like, you can have a strong government that is run by Christian morals that isn't going to trample all over everybody's rights, because what that necessitates is creating the government capable of dictating these values. And in order to do that, even if they're going to be Christian, you have to give the government the power to go into people's lives and dictate directly how they're supposed to be interacting.
And those Christians will not always be the ones in charge.
Yes. And so as much as we might need Christianity, what ends up happening is that by saying that as long as our government is run by Christians, it will be good, there is going to come a day when Christians aren't running it. And we met that day about 100 years ago.
And to be honest, we're pretending like Christianity is one solid block of beliefs and good. There are a lot of really whack job Christians out there.
There's a lot of conflicts.
Yeah, exactly.
Just look at Ireland.
Like personally, I'm a Baptist, and there are some Baptists you don't want to rerun this country, or you're going to go to J.C. Penney's and only be able to find skirts.
Yeah. So what it comes down to is what the conservative movement has to do is nail down what are the actual values being professed here. What is it about Christianity that I want to impart upon my community so importantly? Because if you impart only that Jesus Christ was our Lord and Savior who died on the cross and that's it, what values are you pushing there? What morals are you
plus
pushing
there are a lot of liberal Christians
yes, and so
who are arguably not even biblical.
Yeah.
Again, another thing for Kavika to address.
Yes. But my point being is that, if the divide ends up being I'm Christian and you're not, therefore I'm a conservative and you're not, that completely negates the fact that
we definitely do need policies.
Yeah.
Again, I never denied that.
Yeah.
So, one thing that a lot of, conservative Christians talk about is embodying Christianity through making sure we have cohesive families, specifically cohesive heterosexual nuclear families.
Yeah.
I think that's a very specific policy proposal that a vast majority of Christians, or at least real Christians, can really rally around. And I think they do already. Here's
the issue. Is that a policy for government, or is it a policy for our personal lives and promote in our community, within our churches our localities?
It can be incentivized, and it can,
incentivize how?
Well, for example, we can ban abortion. That way women have less of an incentive to be sexually promiscuous.
That's not going to end that incentive. That doesn't disincentivize it. It just incentivizes other things.
By making it illegal?
Yeah,
I'm just saying that's one way.
So you would make it illegal without making it unnecessary?
Abortion for like 99.5% of cases, probably all cases, isn't necessary.
Oh, I agree. What I'm saying is you would rather just make it illegal rather than cultivate the communities that say, even though it's legal, we don't need to use it.
And government doesn't cultivate communities. They generate fear.
Yeah. We are going to definitely continue on this topic when we get back. You are listening to Red Riff with the Liberty Revolt on KHNC 1360.
All right, let me move.
Now I'll be able to hop in.
Hell of a conversation.
So what's going on with the mics?
So this one,
that mic isn't
not working. So he's trying to get it.
Well, because your mic went out, then Austin's mic
they
went
were
out.
he was trying to turn them on and off and stuff.
And Kavika's learning, so
give
him a break.
Yeah,
he's doing good.
I was pointing at Kevin when I was pointing at this one.
Okay, so if this was Kavika, I thought this was Bucky.
No,
so
he's
okay,
he's teaching.
Yeah, I'm
how to
teaching
run it.
okay, yeah. If it's Kavika, I can't be too hard on him.
Whoever that guy.
Who's Kavika? Never heard of him. Yeah. God, who found this bum on the streets? Is this really the best we got to our mics?
Yeah, so just to inform you, I myself am a Christian, but I approach most of this stuff from a philosophical perspective, because I never assume I'm right about everything. So I ask the questions that I need, that the answer to could determine how I address stuff. And so I'm looking for you to provide a better answer to a question I've personally asked myself.
Well, abortion's just one thing. I have at least like 2 or 3 more policy ideas.
Yeah.
And this is like Kavika's thing. It's like, how involved should state-sponsored religion be involved in conservatism? So if we could maybe
figure out which
ask him a
headphones are
question.
which. So I'm turning off the double. Okay.
Once we have Kavika in the studio.
Put your headphones on. He's going to be doing a sound test to figure out which headphones which. Whose sound is going up?
Who's going up right now?
This one's not even plugged in. Hey Bucky, these aren't even plugged in. This one's not even in.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
There's no sound.
Yeah, I'm.
That's number 2.
That's Austin. Yeah. So. Hello and welcome back to the Red Riff with the Liberty Revolt here. At 5 o'clock, I'm going to start saying it the other way around, but I feel like I'm going to give you guys your just due for now.
Appreciate it.
But I just before we get into this a little more, I want to present my position on the abortion side of things just really quick, and then kind of let you guys get into it. So my whole thing is making it illegal solves nothing, because as we all know, I granted 3%, right? But only 3% of abortions fall into the rape, incest, or health problems. And I know it's less than that most likely, but even at 3%, that is still a significantly small enough portion.
Well, a vast majority of them are just because they want one.
So let me say that means the other 97% of abortions are called abortions of convenience by my terminology. So I do a lot of work on college campuses, and I'm trying to actually figure out how you can approach this topic with people on the left to achieve real goals. And so I ask them, I go, if you try to make abortion illegal, it shuts it down right away, no conversation whatsoever. So I go, how about we agree that the idea of terminating a child in the womb is probably pretty traumatic and terrible for the mother, and that we should probably be figuring out ways to cultivate communities that make abortion unnecessary, so that even if it's legal, no one's getting them because they don't feel those pressures that lead to the 97% that are completely unnecessary.
Now, I'm going to jump in here, and we talked about how it shuts the conversation off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if you think it's okay to kill a child, you don't deserve a conversation.
Yeah.
You don't deserve a conversation. You are legitimately murdering a child. So what we just need to do is we just need to work on ensuring that people not that they have other opportunities, whether it's decreasing the price and the process of making abortions and all these other situations that are alternatives. Continue to create the alternatives, not have conversations with baby murderers.
Yeah. And I really don't want this to turn into an abortion conversation, because the reason why I brought up abortion was because I wanted to provide some examples of how the government can be used to incite more social conservatism and religiosity, and specifically with one commonly held religious goal of building the nuclear family. Banning abortion is one thing you can do, because it disincentivizes sexual promiscuity, and it makes having sex and having babies a lot more precious, and just something that where the natural solution is to have a family instead of getting rid of it and continuing to be promiscuous.
But the difference is, one is protecting a life, and the other is enforcing your own social.
Well, you're protecting a life either way.
I mean, like, the reason why I bring that up is because if your goal is, in America, reduce the amount of abortions, and you can't even present a position that's going to convince the other 50% to listen to what you have to say, you're never going to actually start to reduce abortions. You're not going to be able to reduce abortions by taking the stance, make it illegal, because you're never going to get the amount of support necessary. So what you can do, because people will listen to this on the left, because a lot of them are inherently incredibly compassionate, they have this very paradoxical position where they support abortion because they've been told it's right, but they also have an understanding that it's probably, it probably does cause a lot of pain to the people that are going through it. And so it's if you can approach it as, can we make it unnecessary? Can we cultivate the communities that don't believe that, where the women don't think this is the only option they have, where they're choosing to have sex with men that are going to stick around and be fathers if they should get pregnant?
But the issue is that you said only in 3% of cases it's supposedly necessary.
Yeah, and I know I'm overshooting.
Which I would go so far as to say rape and incest aren't necessary cases.
That's right.
But,
I personally just granted because...
So say like 99% of the time it's an elective abortion or a case where people think it's necessary but not.
Yeah.
So the issue isn't... Yeah, go ahead, Kavika.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this
Well, I will accept.
it's
I mean, do you though?
we've seen
you,
this
though?
because it's this is the one issue that the American right has been so freaking good on. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You see that it is slow incrementation of decline through legal process to make it harder to get an abortion, as well as our communities and our scientific communities going out and showing and proving over and over this is a child, and people saying that this is a child. We have seen a decrease in abortions every single year, and it has been phenomenal. And it's not come from abject, not just legislation, but it's come from a work between the scientific community, our religious community, and our government, each doing their own individual roles.
Yeah.
That's why conservatism is so important. Limit government to its sole role, and then influence your communities, your nonprofits, and your churches in order to push our agenda.
Austin
Not
sounding awfully libertarian.
Well,
because real conservatism is
close to
very close to
but
libertarianism.
at the end of the day, like Austin said, since there has been extensive legal action to minimize abortions, it's just a framework of getting around Roe v. Wade that the Supreme Court accepts, there has been a decrease in abortion. So that just proves my point that if we make abortion illegal, if we take away the choice, then less people will take it. If there is a choice, people who want to will take it. If there isn't a choice, then less people will take it. A vastly amount less people will take it.
You are not eliminating the incentives that these women are convinced are leading them to it. You're not eliminating the abject poverty that exists in these communities. That leads a lot of people to say I can't afford it. Okay, yeah, exactly. It's a failing of the moral construct.
Okay, but if
you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Without distracting you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's mine.
And we are going to get back into this when we return. You're listening to the Red Riff with the Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC.
All right. So if one of the Red Rift guys if one of the Red Rift guys, or Kevin, I suppose, wants to shadow Kavika so that somebody else can kind of take a shift running the board. Evan, if you would unplug that splitter for the headphones that's right in front of you.
This one? Or this one?
Yeah, the splitter. And separate the headphones from the splitter. Plug the headphones back in the jack, and then hand me the splitter.
Separate the headphones from the splitter?
Yeah, right here.
Okay, let me
Okay,
slide
there.
behind you really quick. Pull it apart.
Oh, okay.
And then hand me the splitter. Okay.
So is Kavika coming in here now?
Kavika will come in after Austin learns how to run the board.
Okay. So Austin's going to be there for the next segment, then it's going to be us three here?
Yep.
Okay.
Us three in here. And after we've done this a few times, we'll know how. Oh, Kevin, are those headphones working? No? Great. All right. Now all the equipment is set up.
Yep. How am I doing so far?
Not
Fantastic.
bad.
Way better than the other guys.
Yeah, who were the other guys? Oh, yeah, us.
I'm just kidding. I haven't been able to really listen because I was showing him stuff the whole time,
Yeah.
so I missed like the first 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm my whole point with the abortion debate is more of what is the goal? Is the goal to be Christian and make it illegal, or is the goal to reduce the amount of abortions? And if the goal is to,
both will happen.
I would suggest that God probably wants you to reduce the amount of abortions more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's not one or the other because both are going to happen.
It's. Hello and welcome back to the Red Riff with the Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC. Hey, we got Bucky sitting in the chair now. How's it going there, bud?
Fantastic. I feel much better now that I have used CBD products from 1360 KHNC.com. Shockingly, I was rubbing the lotion on my neck, and it actually helped with my sore throat.
Really?
Yeah, I was rubbing that lotion on hard, making sure that I really worked it into all of my pores. And it did a tremendous job of relieving me. All of the pathologies that were ailing me up until that point. The pressure was really off.
You sound like the back of a bottle label, really. Right now.
But really, guys, it makes all of this possible when you support us. And one of the ways you can support us while taking care of your own health and taking a conservative approach to personal responsibility in regards to your health, which is something the libertarians agree with because they don't want to pay for your health care either. CBD products really do help with so many different things, and it's great to be back. So we're talking about conservatism versus libertarianism. Yep. Did we define our opening arguments in the beginning? It seems to me that the rift I hear articulated most often is that the libertarians believe
I don't think I really
you never identified libertarianism. Asta and I gave somewhat similar but vastly dissimilar definitions of conservatism.
But I'm curious to see
what. Yeah, so let's see what you have to say about.
I wanted to let him warm up before Randy Orton comes in and RKO's here, bud.
Okay,
just kidding.
So what do you define as libertarianism then?
So libertarianism, big L is the Libertarian Party.
Well, yeah.
Small L is just this idea that, and especially since I call myself an anarchist and anarcho-capitalist.
Yeah.
I ascribe to the idea that all interactions between people should be of a voluntary nature. I subscribe to the idea that my right to do what I want ends at your face, if you will. My right to punch ends at your face, kind of deal. It's the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
The idea, as long as you don't transgress upon me, I cannot transgress upon you. And I view the state as a violation of all of these principles. I think that when you involve authority, the state, and you start coercing people to do what you want them to do, that it's an inherent evil. Forcing people to do something that they would not voluntarily do, so long as it's not something that's going to violate, their autonomy or someone else's, is wrong. And so when you talk about the state, when you start talking about legislating morality, first, I think that that's an impossibility because every individual human is unique. You're going to have a wide array of different opinions. And as Jonathan Haidt points out in his book, The Righteous Mind, there's an actual biological difference between a conservative and a liberal.
Yeah.
So if they are inherently not going to be able to necessarily follow your belief patterns, and 50% of people are going to lean one way or the other biologically, you have to be able, if you truly want to create the change, you actually have to do it through cultivating a community, through cultivating positive interactions, through not through pushing the state on people and coercing the actions you want to see, but encouraging it and demonstrating through positive consequences that this is the correct way to live. And so I, as an anarcho-capitalist, believe that all instances of state intervention, especially when it comes to the economy and war and stuff like that, are wrong. I can trace basically every problem I have back with the way the current economy is to some government action. I can trace basically every problem that we have as far as our foreign relations to people hating us back to government action. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this when we return. And at that point, you will be listening to the Liberty Revolt with Red Riff on 1360 KHNC.
The music is about to get a whole lot better.
Yeah, so as far as I know, Bucky is not an anarcho-capitalist.
No, he's not as far as I am, but he's slowly creeping that way.
Well, so I would guess that there's a more massive difference between you two libertarians as opposed to me and Austin.
No, he just thinks that there are some things that the government should participate in, and I don't. But
well, that's a pretty massive difference.
Would that be fair to say?
I mean, if your bar is that the government shouldn't participate in anything, there shouldn't be one. then I would say that's a pretty massive difference.
Yeah, theoretically, yeah. There's a reason why Murray Rothbard said that Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman were socialists.
Right, and we'll get into some of that because I do have some tough questions
Okay.
that will essentially lead you to a point to where you either have to agree in socializing everything, or
Welcome
you have
to the
take it
Socrates
the
hour.
other
The
side.
Socrates hour.
But I would like to basically, I'll when we come back, I'll try to sum up the big problem with the conservatives that the libertarians have.
Okay.
And then I will try to sum up, and then I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah.
And then I'll
I'm
try
gonna
to
give you
sum
a-
up why the conservatives
I'm going to try to give
kind
you
of
a
roll
more
their
before.
eyes at the libertarians and see if you agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that
Sounds
works,
good.
That works really well. You're more in between, so you probably have.
I thought I'd be a
You're-
better moderator for this episode.
I mean, you're a
than anything else.
self-proclaimed
feel like-
conservatarian,
I
so
feel like
you're
I
exactly
can be
in between.
intellectually honest enough to be able to help moderate.
Yeah, I would say so.
I agree, but I mean, you're also better positioned to argue from like a principled position because my libertarian principles kind of shit the bed last week or the week before last week.
I love it. That was really fun going in on you a little bit. You don't sound too libertarian here, Bucky. But colonialization isn't always a bad thing.
Well, it's almost never a bad thing.
Well, I can look at every single foreign international affairs problem back and trace it back directly to some form of U.S. government intervention into someone else's affairs.
And I actually largely agree with the libertarian stance that our military would be stronger if it wasn't currently engaged in 12 fucking battles,
Fucking conflicts,
all of
yeah.
which are meaningless and a waste of our resources.
Mhm.
We could cut spending.
Look
And
at,
if we stopped
let's use Europe,
intervening
for
in so many
example.
ways, we could still be more.
We still
battle-
maintain a
battle
footprint in Europe. What has that footprint in Europe led to? That has led to us subsidizing their defense to the point where they can start implementing certain social safety nets
Yeah.
that then the American people look at and try to destroy our government over because we do not have that.
Yeah, because all our money's going to Europe.
Yeah, whereas they're able to afford all these programs because we supplement their
Yeah,
defense,
well,
and that is
and,
directly leading into the destruction of our own
Yeah,
country.
well, and the easy fix is to just force the European countries to pay more of their dues for NATO.
We'll just pull our forces out and say, hey, yeah, good luck
Well,
with
yeah.
Russia. Tell us now about your universal health care.
Yeah, you can't have universal health care when you actually have to have a real military.
Then that's, but it's only 5:01. We still got minutes here. But that's my whole point. Is
Yeah.
like you can trace back even our own problems here to our government's presence across overseas, because when these places are able to afford universal health care, particularly because we subsidize their military to the tune of billions of dollars. And then you have the American left that is actively trying to destroy our country and electing people who are trying to put in the same policy Europe has as a direct result of not defending themselves.
Mhm.
You can say, look, our presence in Europe is causing this. Our
Yeah.
presence, our military presence in Europe is causing the socialized healthcare push in America.
Mhm.
We could end the stream and restart the stream if you think it'll help us pick up some.
Yeah, we got 2 watching right now. Thank you guys for watching, by the way. Norman,
What's up, guys?
I do want to say we can see you.
And we appreciate you.
Couldn't really acknowledge it live on air, but I'm going to acknowledge it live on live stream. Thank you for watching our show. Appreciate you. Also, if there's any topic you want us to discuss, go ahead and put it in the comments, and we will get to it.
We would like to get into some of the some specific things and let Evan and Kevin kind of battle it out towards the end of this.
Yeah.
So that would be immigration, foreign policy.
Is this still the intro?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think he's going to be surprised that I'm not an open borders guy.
As an end cap?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so
I'd love to see you reconcile that, but okay.
because we have social safety nets, you can't have a country that has social safety nets and open borders.
Yeah.
So we can have open borders if we had an actual open market for economic competition, but we don't. So we can't.
A lot of libertarianism seems to rely on a prerequisite level of libertarianism.
Yeah, and a lot of it also addresses the fact like it's realistic, and it's like, look, I would like open borders, but I also understand just how detrimental having open borders with a country that also provides your immigrants with every single incentive on the book to come here and not go anywhere else. Mexico isn't competing with us on the job front because Mexicans come here and they get free healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't have any social safety nets. They're making.
I mean, we are in a sense competing with Mexico because they get the cheapest labor possible, and by competing, really, it's not a competition because the wages Mexicans go for are practically non-existent to what Americans expect.
Yeah, being an illegal immigrant in America is a better life than being a legal citizen of Mexico.
Yep.
Most of the time.
Well, yeah, so at the end of the day, even if we had a free market, then, I mean, employers will always go
But
for the
we
cheaper
could get on
labor
the topic
option.
of we could get on the topic of what should we do with the immigrants, the illegal immigrants
Yeah.
living in the country now.
But,
Because
but
that
I
is
mean,
an area
as far
where
as
you
a
guys
social
do,
safety net, I wouldn't want open borders
They're
at all.
trespassing. They're breaking the law.
Yeah, I wouldn't want open borders at all, though, because at the end of the day, the employer is always going to seek out the cheaper labor option, and that's always going to be someone from the third world who wants to do it for less, because anything, literally anything they have in America is still better than the best thing they have in Mexico.
Well, that sounds
But if
great
we didn't
for
have a minimum wage and we had a free competition of labor, our laborers would also be competing with Mexicans on wages. Like they
Well,
would,
I mean,
they would
minimum-
drive the wages down. to a
Minimum
point.
wage doesn't matter because they always get paid under the table for less than
No,
minimum
but
wage.
but
it
I, as an
matters for the
American,
people who are
I
taking-
legally will have a gun put to my head if I try to take a job under $12.50 an hour.
Yeah,
That's illegal. I legally can't
But
compete
an
with him if
American
he's willing to
citizen
take
can also
$10.
get an under the table.
If there was no minimum wage, do you not think the employer would rather pay the legal citizen $10 an hour rather than the illegal immigrant $10 an hour?
yeah.
Yeah, it's
But I mean, there already is a minimum wage, so let's call
Yeah,
it minimum wage in Colorado is $11.25.
I thought it's $12.50 now.
Dude, I'm pretty sure I have to. I got to get rid of all the music that says Bucky in it. Bucky.
Norman, I am actually a member of the Mises Caucus. I'm a Meacock. Go Dave Smith.
I know. I was just saying. I need
Future
to do all
governor of
that. I
California.
need to fix that.
Oh, hold on. No, I want to do it. I'm gonna be funny. Hello and welcome to the Liberty Revolt with
Not-
Red Riff.
Yep,
Bucky
we're still
Dillon
here.
show.
Not the Bucky Dillon show.
I'm still
Come
working
on, bud.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Governor, but I'm still updating my music. So I'll get another shot.
I guess I got to
Larry
forgive you
Elder
because
show.
it's Larry Elder saying it. So that man is my idol. So, but yeah, so we got Bucky, we got Evan, and we got Kavika joining us
Mhm.
now
Hello.
inside the studio. So what we were talking about before the break, I think
We were talking about something about we were talking about anarcho-capitalism. And
Oh,
anarcho-capitalists.
yes. So I believe I'm a member of the Mises Caucus.
Yep.
So I'm a more conservative,
Peacock.
libertarian. But basically, what it comes down to is that I do not believe that there is any form of legitimacy in the state
Mhm.
because I never consented. At what point have I ever consented to the state? And I never did. I never willingly said, okay, cool, I'm going to abide by all of these laws.
Have you
Now-
ever consented
now,
to be
Kevin-
born?
Of course not.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
well,
So
there you
does
go.
that mean you should kill yourself?
I mean, if one of you has a gun,
Means my mother is illegitimate.
No, but-
Yeah, should you kill your mom because you never consented for you to be born out of her?
Yes, let me reanimate her and put her down again. Okay, but anyways.
Oh, okay, you didn't have to go that dark, but okay.
No, but if you're gonna use the consent thing, yeah, I didn't consent to being born, but I also didn't consent to any of the laws that we have. And if the only reason I am doing something is because I know violence is on the other end, if I do not, that is coercion.
Okay.
And if we were talking about sex, that would be rape. But somehow when we're talking about the government, this is just okay.
Kevin, now I'm going to try to articulate the libertarians' problem with conservatives.
Yeah.
You tell me if this
Yes.
sounds about accurate. They are halfway to statism, which might as well be a violation of the core principles of libertarianism.
Yeah.
Well, isn't
and put them
statism
in the
just-
same camp as anything else? The problem with the conservatives from the libertarian perspective is that they're inherently hypocrites.
I hear
for-
Big Gov sucks.
For claiming that they are sticking to the principles of individual liberty, the non-aggression principle, while simultaneously justifying the use of government for
Yes.
many reasons.
Well, first of all, isn't statism just the belief in governments
Yeah.
that the government should exist?
Yeah.
Well, then isn't almost like many other libertarians also statist since they aren't anarchist?
I know every single one in this room with me is, so.
Yeah. Well, so then by your definition, basically everyone on the political spectrum, including most libertarians, are statists.
Yeah.
I don't see why that's such a big
That's why
deal.
Murray Rothbard called Milton Friedman.
Okay.
And Ayn Rand socialist
Yes.
because they
And I have an argument to leverage against the conservatives in the room to see where your principles actually stand.
But I do want to
And
answer your
show you
question
that
really quick.
conservatism is inherently a gray area.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just really quick, I'm just going to answer Bucky's question. Yeah, I agree with what you said. I work with Turning Point USA on Colorado State's campus. I'm very, I've been the president for a while.
Mhm.
I'm going to be, continuing to work with them the rest of the semester and the rest of the year. And what I hear a lot that from the conservatives is obviously Big Gov sucks, that, we're all about free speech, free markets, and free people. And then once you get down into the nitty gritty of it, they always have some kind of policy that's going to incentivize the behavior they want, which I can to an extent understand. But at the same time, it's all about enforced morality. They don't like the government the left uses, but they want the same amount of government from the right.
And we want to use it
for different purposes.
for
different purposes.
And we want to use it for the proper reasons.
But there's only a degree of the amount of government that we want. And that's why you have such a big spectrum within conservatism. Because people who go on the air of the right do tend to be much more open to the idea of free speech, free thought, and philosophical.
Right, but you'll never find a fundamentalist libertarian that backs the blue.
Yeah.
Right.
Because backing the blue is backing the gun.
Yeah, when you say don't,
libertarianism.
when I meet a libertarian that has, or when I see someone that has a back the blue sticker next to a don't tread on me sticker, all I can ask is, who do you think is going to be the boot that steps on you?
Well, like who do you think is enforcing the red flag laws?
Yeah, it's like, how much money would I have to pay someone in this room to go into somebody's house, kick down their door for no reason, and take their guns away and put them under threat of violence?
Around like $60K a year, whatever a cop makes.
Yeah,
Let me see if I can summarize the conservatives' problem with the libertarians.
Okay.
And you conservatives, let me know if this is accurate. You have tremendous sympathy for the individual liberty and the free market capitalism that the libertarians propose, but you see true libertarianism as not enough of an orderly framework to operate from, to protect people from what you guys see as the excess of freedom.
Well, it wouldn't be the excess, at least in my case.
Well, for mine.
Yeah, it would be the creation of complete chaos, because I don't actually believe, personally speaking, that human beings are innately good and trustworthy. It's not something that I choose to believe. I'm not going to want that. You might as well just say, hey, here's my social security number, take it, and I'm just going to trust you not to do anything with it.
I mean, I had to do that in the Army every time I filled out a piece of paper. Like, I'm not even joking. Every single piece of paper I filled out had my name, address, and my social security number on it.
However, there are legal protections for you that if somebody does something with that, you now have a legal ramification against them, and there's a way to correct the situation and to get your name realigned.
Yeah,
and we have a caller coming in.
And we have a break coming in. You're listening to the Liberty Revolt with the Red Riff on 1360 KHNC.
Yeah, so it's a very
right. So it seems like the conservatives believe that liberty is best realized through a framework.
There's something else
that can only be laid out by government.
A lot of conservatives also believe that libertarianism encourages degeneracy,
which it does.
I don't necessarily.
Yes, and the reason why, you're comparing just. Oh, they're going.
Okay.
Hi. Okay. The libertarians have just left the room, so now you're stuck with the conservatives. How's it going, everybody? Yeah. So this is Evan. #Evan's an authoritarian.
Yeah.
And
Austin's in the other room. #Austin's a neocon.
Yep. I'm still lucky I don't have a hashtag yet.
We were on through the whole commercial break because our mics didn't get shut off.
Did we say an F word?
No.
I don't think so.
No,
we didn't really say anything bad.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen.
Well, that's a good rule of thumb, though. Just never say any bad. if you're near a mic, then just assume it's on air.
Yep.
Sort of like if you're near a gun, assume it can be fired at any time.
He told me it was good, so I ran in here.
Okay. You were good, so you got switched out.
Yep. Yep. Well, I should have stuck with him for another round. It's okay, he's got it now. I have faith. I have faith, Luke Skywalker. I have faith.
But yeah, so I'm going to address what Bucky said about the libertarian problem with
Can I,
conservatism.
real quick,
Let
I'm
me
just
reiterate
going to point out
that.
that like
Right.
there's an
I'll
idea
read-
from conservatives that libertarianism
Mhm.
encourages degeneracy, and then I'll let you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, but mainly what he said about big government and how there's an inconsistency there. I can talk about that.
My dad called to tell us we were still live on air.
At least you're getting sort of
Thinking about you. So. Sounds like Tagalog.
Melee.
What language is this?
Melee.
Oh, okay.
Hello and welcome back to the Liberty Revolt with the Red Riff.
Hello.
We are currently discussing the merits of libertarianism versus conservatism, and I just wanted to point out before I let Evan go off a little bit here, and maybe Bucky has something to interject real quick when I'm done, just to set you up a little more. One of the big things I see that conservatives have against libertarianism is the idea that libertarianism encourages degeneracy because it makes legal degeneracy, right? It makes degeneracy legal. My stance on that is that no, I just don't think that being a degenerate should get you killed necessarily. And now there are certain forms of degeneracy that, you know, does change that, such as like pedophilia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously that doesn't fall, but I don't think using drugs, I don't think being involved in sexual labor, I don't think gambling should necessarily get you killed. However, I think that we as communities should be discouraging this stuff. Now, legalizing does not mean encouraging someone to do it. So that's my whole retort to the idea that legalizing something will inherently encourage the
Well, nonetheless, this is still one of the concerns that Bucky had, from the perspective of a libertarian. What's the problem with Republicans? He mentioned that there was a glaring hypocrisy with our view of how we constantly espouse small governments. And for me, at least, from a more populist perspective, I think at least my brand of conservatism is a lot more consistent, because we don't always go off espousing small governments. Like, small government sucks. Like, small government is the goal of all policy. Because what we really mean by small governments, at least what I mean and what a lot of populists mean, is that we want economic policy to be generally deregulatory, which in effect shrinks the size of government, or at least the administrative power of governments. But as far as social policy, we actively want government policy to encourage social things and to achieve socially conservative ends.
Yeah.
And to do that, we have to use the government and expand the government. So at the end of the day, I go so far as to consider myself a big government conservative. Sure, I want deregulatory economic policy, but I want the government to grow so it makes sure that society is embodying social conservative standards.
And that's actually one of the gray areas, because I'm going to be a more limited government type person. But I do believe we have a caller, so let's go ahead and let them come on air here.
1 second.
In
here.
1 moment.
One
So
moment.
while we're waiting on the caller to come on, the biggest thing that we do want to acknowledge here is that there is this difference in conservatives, because some of us are going to be more pro larger governments than others. And caller, I hear you're on air, so go ahead, speak your mind.
gentleman there, I don't know who it was, said that he never agreed to obey any of the laws
That was Kevin.
That was me.
Kevin.
That was Kevin. Your anarcho optimist. Yeah. You're dropping off a little bit. Would you mind speaking up a little bit? Perfect. Yeah. Yep. Well, so my retort to that is that I never actually ever consensually agreed. Now, me saying, hey, I agree because otherwise I'm going to die, again, goes back to the idea of how is that consent?
And just like I said, that's a rather extreme generalization. You're not going to die for speeding, and you're not going to die for...
I will die if the cop decides to pull me over, and maybe I think that it wasn't okay to be pulled over, or maybe the cop's having a bad day. Who knows? The only way I can possibly be killed by a cop is if an interaction with the cop is started. That is the only way a force with a cop can begin. And I just disagree that there are reasons that me speeding should necessitate the cop.
But what Kevin is saying is fundamentally all of these laws are backed by the threat of jailhouse and bayonet.
Yeah.
And he doesn't believe that someone should be killed, regardless of the level of resistance, for smoking pot.
I don't think someone smoking weed should get someone killed. Let me put it this way. I don't use my blinker on the road. Oh, is the collar still there? Yes, sir. I worked in the Army for 6 years. Government job?
No, a civilian job.
Yeah. I've worked plenty of odd jobs. I've been working basically since the day I turned like 18. So. Yeah, plenty. Yeah, of course, because I am. Yeah. Oh, but that was under threat of violence.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, what about all the laws I disagree with? No, what about every single law I disagree with? I'm not consenting to these laws.
Jim, thank you for calling. We're going to have to drop the call just because of how bad the audio quality
and
was.
And it's not on the live stream, so I apologize for our live stream listeners.
And so,
but we do appreciate you, Jim.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
So I think that I need to just put this out there. What I'm saying is that the only potential way for the state to get involved in my life is for me to break a law by their standards. Mm-hmm. Now, what those laws are dictated by them. I don't consent to all of them. I never consented to the idea that I'm not allowed to carry.
Well, they're dictated by citizens. They're dictated by citizens who get elected by other citizens.
Yes. So here's the question: did you vote for somebody?
Of course I voted
Then
for
you've
somebody.
created consent.
Yeah.
We're
No,
done.
I'm not. I didn't.
Okay,
I'm
so-
voting in a system because I know that.
Moving
No,
on.
because you're completely misunderstanding what a vote is. I am voting against someone holding a gun to me. Every vote, if I'm voting yes or no.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
I'm not sitting here with a gun pointed to your head saying this is how you have to vote.
You're sitting there
You
saying
are
if you
choosing.
disagree, you're saying that if I get what I want, you have to do what I say.
Well,
That's what a vote is.
no,
If
no,
I'm
no.
voting for this, and if I win, you have to do what I say.
The candidate is underneath
That's no, but you voted
the
for
gauge
candidate.
of the people.
No.
It's not the other way around, and that's
A
what
vote-
you're trying to argue right
A vote
now,
is holding
which is
pointing a gun
why
at someone.
Anarcho-capitalism doesn't make sense.
You aren't required to vote.
You are not required to vote.
No, you're not.
It's
You're
a
not required to
choice.
vote. Yeah,
You are
and I made a
choosing
choice. Yeah, I made a choice to stand against a system that I have not consented
By
to.
participating
Most
in
of the
it?
laws. Yeah,
Okay, there we go.
yeah. I am participating in this system. That doesn't mean that it's morally right.
Well, then
I
why
know,
would
no,
you
like you guys
participate
still
in the
haven't.
system?
No, you guys still haven't explained to me if the reason why I consented was for violence. Why is that okay?
Well, but you haven't. You
Yes.
willingly consented to voting. You willingly consented to having a choice, and you willingly
Okay,
consented
so what about the
to
person that
being
didn't
here.
vote? What about the
in
person that
this
didn't vote?
country.
Yeah. What about the person that didn't vote?
What Kevin is saying is that the government is fundamentally a big gun.
Yeah, you
It's a
guys
big
like
gun.
you guys are
And-
missing the point
And
because
you can vote to downsize that gun.
as much as you
without
want, but it's
You
still a
can vote
gun.
to downsize that gun. So why aren't you out there fighting with the people who are trying to limit it then?
Because you're not trying to limit it.
Okay,
I'm
so-
trying to limit it.
I mean,
I'm the only
here's-
one who can sit here and honestly say that yes, every single policy, regulation, everything the government does is backed by a gun. Because the government has monopoly on violence, and you
Okay.
listen to what the government says. How about
I
we make taxes
don't
voluntary?
always.
You'll immediately find out how many people pay taxes because they know the threat of violence is behind them.
Okay.
But it's
Like-
not the threat of violence that was there. The reason for taxes is to maintain the minimal things necessary of the federal government. That was the original intent, and that's where I think we should be. Is that it's the minimal
Was that
taxes
intent pushed
in order
through by
to
the
enforce
government?
our border, in order to make sure that we have a military
No.
that is usable.
The original
And
intent
in
was
order
to
to
fund a
protect
military
us.
for the World War One.
No, that wasn't what. Huh?
That was the original
What's the
intent of the
real
income
role of
tax.
government, Austin?
Well, right. There we go.
Why does the government have to do that? Why can't I
Because-
do that?
Well, because
so
if you go
assume
into
that-
moral relativism, what is to say that I don't choose, that I just want to disagree and shoot you right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, so assume we're
Because
in like
you're a good
NCAP.
human being.
But
Okay, how
that
can we
takes
trust
a-
people to be good?
There we go.
So if we are in like an anarcho-capitalist system,
If I had a gun
where-
on my hip,
where
you would
the
be a lot less
only-
likely to point a gun at me.
okay,
Not
well, if we're in an
necessarily.
Yeah.
if
Look
we're
at
in
the
an
Wild West.
anarcho-capitalist system where the main incentive is to make profit in the pure capitalist system,
Yeah.
then there is nothing stopping someone from simply coercing others.
Yeah, it's
And
called they
also-
have to earn your money. They don't get given it. The government is currently
Okay,
given
but if
money
someone
through
decides,
coercion.
if someone
A
decides
private
to
corporation
coerce,
has to earn your
if someone
money.
decides to coerce, then who's there to stop it?
There you go.
Hopefully, every single person who has a gun.
But how
because
can you rely on that to happen?
by
what-
allowing everybody to have a gun.
Okay, but the state.
I think
Okay, so
By
the
saying
state is
everybody-
just the
everybody
state is just
has-
a collection.
So I
The
don't
state's
see where
just
we're
a
any
collection
different.
of people of common interests. So
Yeah.
say one
Are we?
person, and 20 other people, or like 100 other people, or whatever the scale is, have a common interest to form a state to push
You don't,
certain
you don't
interests,
even
and
share
there's
common
nothing to
interests with
stop
half
it.
of your country, let alone like the
Oh.
entirety of your country.
But
We
that
all
does not
agree
make
to be in a political system.
And we all agree
I don't
to
agree
the
with this
social
political system at
contract
all.
by which we're- Well, then there's other countries you can go to.
No, there's not.
Sure, there are.
Because
You
they
guys
have
don't
borders.
necessarily agree with the political
They
system.
have
Okay.
borders.
So-
They have governments that also have monopolies on violence.
And what are those borders enforced by? Physical violence. There's two means to wealth. There's the production and exchange process,
Mhm.
wherein you mix a raw material out there in the world with your labor to create something that is your own,
We love
and then
Rothbard.
you trade with people. And on the other side is the political means to wealth, which is through one-sided confiscation. It's all a gun.
It's through
All
power.
the government
Yeah.
is a big gun.
The government
gun.
produces. The government literally produces nothing. The government has no product that you can purchase from them
Yeah.
other than a dollar bill, which
Okay.
you have to give them a dollar bill for. That is the only thing the government
Well, yeah,
does.
the government
It
is just a
generates
company.
revenue
Yeah, of
through
course, the
threatening
government
you with
is a
violence.
company. It doesn't have to be a company. It's not.
Yeah,
Honestly,
it's all it is.
and that's the problem is that it's not. what you're describing it as, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to just say that, oh my, I don't pay my taxes, now I'm dead. I mean, you
What
gotta
happened?
understand.
Okay, so I don't pay my
extreme
taxes.
Your
Okay, so I don't pay my
generalization is,
taxes.
because
What's
it
the next
really
step?
is extreme.
What? So I don't pay
Okay,
my taxes.
so
What's step 2?
Odds are the IRS doesn't even get to you because they have bigger
Okay,
things to
so
worry
step
about.
so step 3 is IRS
no
finally
death.
gets to me.
Well,
IRS
so
finally
the
gets me. What's step
IRS,
4?
though,
So then
it's
they
an
garnish
extremely
wages.
lengthy process.
What if I'm getting
that
paid only in cash?
Eventually leads to a wage garnishment.
Well, then they can't
And
track it. You don't
contact,
pay
if
taxes.
you're doing only cash, you're only being paid in cash. They can't track it anyway.
Yeah.
So you have
So I'm
nothing to worry about.
I'm getting paid only in cash. They notice that I have
you're
a
saying-
house. They notice that I have a car, and they go, "Hey, where did that money come from?"
And that's a good question. Where
Yeah.
did that money come
So
from?
what are they going to do? They're going to come in and start confiscating stuff. They're going to issue
Okay.
a warrant. They're going to
So-
come into my house. They're going to break into my
Because
house
they
and
have to
initiate
make
force.
sure that it isn't underneath an illegal confine.
Yeah.
That came about because that's how the mafia was operating. So yes, let's go ahead and have a mob state. We know
If
how
things
well
weren't
that
ille-
went.
If things weren't illegal, you wouldn't need a mafia to provide stuff. You're listening to the Liberty
Oh.
Revolt and the Red
No, no,
Riff
no,
on
no, no.
1360 KHNC.
Yeah, we saw what a mob state looked like. So how do we like Al Capone? I mean, I mean, let's be honest. Let's be serious. I mean, the people. on
How
the
is Al
live stream
Capone
can
any
still
different than
get
the
it.
government?
Quite a bit different because he actually killed them. There was a difference.
Our government
Our government kills people. Our government has killed 1 million people in the Middle East in the last 20 years.
The absolute lack of John Locke and state of nature discussion here is making me.
Well, then
really
you
sick.
introduce it.
And local governments do create products.
Local-
They create services.
Okay,
Local
yes, they
government-
do.
Local-
Oh,
John Locke then.
The local city is the furthest I will go on a government, and so would anarchists because they understand that's called a community. And community should
no, that's a
no,
government.
no, that's
That's called a
Kevin,
government.
I got bad news
completely
for
against
you.
what anarchy
Y'all are
stands for.
losing me.
No, anarchists believe in voluntary communities as long as I'm there voluntarily.
anarchists-
So-
Right, but
voluntary-
it's a
so-
social contract, which means you have
No,
the government.
and
It's
so
that way.
voluntary-
Let me ask you guys.
So-
We're a state.
let me ask you losers a question.
Well, then you talk about it next time. But a voluntary community that forms to determine how the community should conduct itself, that's literally a government.
There you
No,
go.
no,
It's
it's
a
not.
social contract. Every government
You're
is underneath a social
you're
contract.
conflating a voluntary community wherein everybody is treated as an equal and all things are done through voluntary means with an actual government wherein there is coercive
Okay,
force.
so
wherein-
now how do you enforce the laws of that
So
voluntary
you form
community?
like a not government, but the closest thing
yeah, it's all private
semantically to a
like,
government.
The big
What
thing
happens?
is voluntary. It's gotta
Okay,
be
so what
voluntary.
happens if someone doesn't agree to it?
Yeah, bye. You're now trespassing. You're now violating.
Oh,
Okay, so that's not
what if
consent,
they're
that's
a
not
child
voluntary.
rebelling?
What?
What if they're a child rebelling?
You can't consent under the age of 18.
Okay,
Oh,
but
under whose
so you
construct?
have someone who doesn't
Under
like.
the idea that not
I thought
So
everybody
no,
was
no.
equal.
So
under
you
the
have
idea
someone.
that at some point
But
that
your
people are not
words, I
born
thought
with
everybody
equal-
was equal.
Yeah, so under the idea that not everybody is capable of consenting, like a 6-year-old can't consent, a 7-year-old can't consent. You have to figure
Okay,
out the
but
age at which
Kevin-
a person
Kevin,
can
you're
Wait,
gonna
that's an
have-
innate
And that
contradiction
But
to
Kevin,
what
you're
you just said.
gonna have a good amount of people over the age of 18 who don't like the city government, who in this anarcho-capitalist land
Yeah, I just believe
doesn't
that things
doesn't
should be-
want to consent to
a
the
government
not governments.
a government takes, a private corporation earns, and that's the difference between the
Okay,
two.
but
A
you aren't
private-
proposing a private corporation. You're proposing a group of people who
private-
voluntarily
Yeah.
assemble
Yeah.
to
A
to
society
go.
That's called a
Maximally-
corporation.
And that is
Okay,
called
but these people
social
don't
contract.
produce
That's called-
anything.
that's called-
These people don't produce anything as per your definition, and they also exist to make sure that society conducts itself in a certain way.
Right, which means you
It's a
created
government.
a government.
And
That's
you
the
said
very
if
definition of a
someone
government.
deviates and doesn't want to do that,
And
you're
Except
going to
there's
forcefully remove them.
no
And-
coercive taking of taxes.
But
There's
you
no
just said there's
but
coercion
there
if you're
is
going to
coercion
forcefully
because now
remove
you're
them
being coerced
from
by
people
the
who don't like
planet.
it.
No, because you violated the voluntary agreement to be there. You are no longer you consented to follow rules, and then when you decide to take those rules away, you're no longer there. But
This guy has no idea what he believes.
but you just proposed a system that establishes those rules.
What?
You just proposed a system that establishes those
Yeah,
rules.
it's called voluntary interaction.
That's called a government.
Yes, it's a
That's
government.
the literal
You're
definition
no,
of
you
a
guys
government.
still have this presupposition that the state is agreed to. The state is inherently coercive.
I can't believe you are actually arguing for a government here. Oh my goodness! I thought you were an anarchist.
I am an anarchist. I'm not arguing for a state.
You are arguing
One
for a
guy,
government.
one person at a time. I would like to ask you two a question.
Oh my goodness! People on the live stream,
Hey,
I'm
hold
sorry,
on.
you're hearing from a guy who has no idea what he believes.
I appreciate ad hominem attacks. I haven't done a single one to any of you guys, but thank you. I'm very aware of what I believe, and you guys seem to not be able to understand what consent is. So when we come back in, I'm gonna describe what consent is.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
The more I hear the anarcho-capitalism, the funnier it sounds. Go ahead.
Hello and welcome back to the Liberty Revolt with the Red Riff. I am currently having to deal with a group of guys that don't understand what consent is. So consent, no, I'm going to define consent.
Yeah.
Consent is performing an action without any form of undue pressure through violence or coercion or any other non-voluntary means.
Okay.
And so when I say that anarcho-capitalism supports voluntary communities together, that means I support voluntary communities. You're allowed to freely come and go. You're allowed to freely agree to the principles being provided therein. The people that are a part of the community are allowed to decide their own, and you have individual autonomy. If you want to live outside the community and not follow their laws, you're allowed to do that.
Okay, so your standard for consent then is what you said, no undue force or anything. So like say you're dying of cancer, for example, and you go to the doctor and he says that you have to do chemotherapy, which is a horrible process that takes all your hair and kills your cells.
Oh yeah.
Is the doctor coercing you then? And is it a bad thing that he, by your definition, is coercing you?
So I guess you're not aware of like Christian scientists that would say, nope, I'm going to pray it away.
Well, I never condone that.
Well, that's what would happen.
Well,
if you voluntarily choose to take the chemo, you can say, I don't want to try this. My mother got to try.
But is it voluntary if your doctor's pressuring you deliberately?
Yeah.
Yes, because you still get to say, no, I don't want to take it. So that's called consent.
Right. But one of the things, though, that you were trying to convince us of is this idea that we're going to be within this community voluntarily, and we're voluntarily following it. So then what happens if somebody breaks the rule?
The rules, as in they violate my sovereignty.
Sure.
Well, the non-aggression principle says that I'm allowed that they are liable for what they've done. That it is their duty to make me whole again.
Really?
If you violate my bodily autonomy or my private property in some way, shape, or form, I am due restitution.
I mean, isn't that the same thing in the states?
Same as a government?
Yeah. It would be if it wasn't voluntary. If it wasn't voluntary. So again, you guys just don't understand. No, you say there you go, but you haven't even addressed the fact that I say the word voluntary.
You just defined a government.
A government has no voluntary nature. There is no
social contract that you
Kavika.
voluntarily buy into.
No, the social contract does not exist. I played no part in the social contract. At the end of the day, what happens is you.
I can't believe I just heard that. No, okay, go ahead, continue. Go ahead.
So when I say things have to happen voluntarily, I mean that I get to agree whether or not this is going to happen. I get to agree. If I steal from you, you are entitled to restitution. Now, I don't get to agree whether or not, weed would be legal in an area, because at the end of the day, there's no state telling me it is or isn't. It's a community of voluntary interactors who say, when you're in this area, we ask that you don't smoke weed. And just know if you do, you're now violating the rules set forth in this voluntary community that does not have any.
There's no substantive difference.
Let me see if I can sum up what you guys are going, and then we'll switch to the next one.
Okay.
Let me real quick. The substantive difference is consent. This word that means I did this voluntarily. What is so hard? Like the U.S. government is not consensual. It is all violence based.
So at the age of 18, did you consent to live here?
No, I live here.
Oh, no, wait. So you didn't consent to live here, but you're 18 and you have the ability to choose.
I was born a U.S. citizen. I wasn't born and given the choice where I wanted citizenship.
You don't have to live here. You can
apply
for citizenship.
I happen to love this. I happen to love this country. I happen to have served this country.
There you go. So that just defeated your own argument right there. Moving on. Bucky.
You still haven't. You still haven't described how what I said was like. If Bucky were to disagree with me, is he still consenting?
So am I allowed as the state?
Let me see if I can sum this up, and then we'll move on.
Okay,
let's go. Okay. So essentially, what the fascists here are saying, essentially what you guys are saying is that even if a commune gets together and voluntarily comes up with how they want their little neighborhood to run, there needs to be some kind of law enforcement mechanism. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. And what you're saying is that's just a small scale government, and our government is essentially that, but perverted, corrupted, and on this large scale. and then what Kevin is saying is there's the issue in libertarianism kind of relies on a prerequisite of libertarianism to a degree, and he thinks that you should be able to basically just have open borders with other governments, so that you could just go wherever things fit.
Yeah, we don't currently have the open. I don't believe that we personally should in America because we have social safety nets, and that removes. No, but what I'm saying is like there's a difference between a national government that gets to impose its laws on everyone, as in you cannot create a community that voluntarily agrees to different laws than your government currently. You cannot do that.
Mm-hmm.
If your community does that, it is subject to
treason.
So my thing is, if that community wants to voluntarily adopt its own set of laws and stuff that would potentially conflict with the federal government, they're allowed to, because that federal government wouldn't be there to stop them. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I would rather those hierarchies are developed based on competence and not capability of violence. No, the American government. No, the hierarchy. The hierarchy the government works on is a hierarchy of violence. They are the most violent force.
No. Yes.
Yeah. So why? Yeah. Oh, I'm very aware of how human history is.
No, because you're innately contradicting yourself every time you try to explain it away.
No, I mean, so you guys are conflating, you are conflating how I am in principle with what my understanding of the United States is. I understand you can't get rid of the government in the United States. So my whole goal is how can we put forth policies that do absolutely nothing to trample on people's individual rights. But what comes along with it is the inherent understanding of what the state actually is. And what the state actually is a coercive, parasitic force that only gets anything through violent taking, does not produce anything on its own, and enforces its laws based on a hierarchy of violence, not a hierarchy of competence.
Okay.
Therefore,
and again, I ask you, how does your voluntary community enforce its own regulations?
Because the monopoly on violence is held by the people. A corporation would not.
Second Amendment, bud. Second Amendment. Okay.
Plus, I mean, the cops are also people. The federal police force
Bingo.
is also people. Every law enforcement arm of the
country
is all manned by people.
Yeah, and
a police force, a government. I don't know.
It's the voluntary nature behind the laws that they're enforcing.
Let's ask a question. Let's ask a question to the conservatives.
Okay.
When we get back.
Dang it.
You're listening to Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC with the Red Rift. So if you're going to Tucker Carlson your way through this, I'm going to start ignoring you. I don't know,
Tucker Carlson in my way through this.
Yeah, you're sitting there and laughing at points rather than providing any actual.
Oh yeah. So do we want to get to a discussion more about what Austin's going from then, about like Locke and whatnot, and the state of nature?
Like it.
Because Austin sort of has a different angle that I think can explain better how the state's consensual.
Because you can acknowledge that the state is inherently non-consensual, but that it's necessary. That's the problem. That's dishonest.
In your voluntary system. If a child is born into that system, did they have consent?
The child can choose which community they live to which community they join.
So they don't have consent until a certain
age? I not? Yes.
Oh my goodness. So doesn't that completely defeat everything you're trying to say right now?
Not in the slightest. I think all because if you're not capable of actually having the intellectual basis for consent, then you should not. You cannot actually give consent. You cannot have an 11-year-old sign contracts because 11-year-olds don't actually understand the consequences of their actions. So my belief that the ability to consent comes with age and experience holds up pretty well.
So what if the different communities have different ages of consent? So one says an 11-year-old does it, and another one says a 15-year-old does, and another one says a 21-year-old does.
Yeah, well, we'll know which community does the best.
That is the exact issue with everything that you're saying.
Well, that's
Right
kind of
now,
how it
I
works
wanna-
now, right?
That's how it works right now.
How many countries?
So I want to
what
know
is-
how
what
it's
is-
any different.
What is the lowest age of consent in America? Because every state can set it themselves. What
Well,
is the lowest age of
for
consent?
marriage, I think it's like 14 with parental consent.
14 with
Parental consent. It is
In
16.
Kentucky.
It is 16 across the board everywhere else.
Alright.
16, 18.
Yeah.
Now let me ask a question. When we
Japan's age of consent is 12. You know, none of their
And-
federal age of consent is 12. How many of their prefectures do you think have an age of consent of 12?
Not many.
0.
Which again goes to prove what we're saying.
Doesn't it say
We're
that?
just gonna move on
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
If a commune that can set its own rules to what is a government, isn't that fundamentally a government?
I'm going to go straight to you, Bucky. Go straight to you. Hello and welcome back to the Liberty Revolt. We are joined today by the Red Riff. Before the break, Bucky wanted to ask a question of our conservative. Bucky?
All right, so here's the question. Justify a publicly provided police force.
Oh, justify it.
There you go.
Government has that right, or do I? Government doesn't have rights.
The government's purpose is to protect these.
The government
things.
is a person? Yeah.
Yes. And so there's your justification. I mean, it's the enforcer of the social contract that we live under voluntarily. Oh my.
I mean,
Go ahead.
So if a society can get together to do that, why can't a society socialize, which is essentially what police force is, the socialization
yeah.
of public safety? Why can't people get together voluntarily and socialize every other thing that is a prerequisite to life? Food is obviously necessary to the pursuit of happiness and freedom. Should we collectivize all farming?
Well, there you go.
The government has that right, though, right?
No.
So why is the government?
doesn't.
Why is the government allowed to tax?
Because we're giving them consent to tax for our borders, and in
I never
order to
gave
run-
consent, and in fact,
Oh,
that did not
you're
even.
gonna keep coming
No,
around
I-
to the same thing, but I tell you again and again and again, you're not obligated to live here.
So if I
Keep
when
going,
I
Austin.
tell you that Woodrow Wilson is the direct reason we have the income tax because he needed to pay for World War I,
There's
you're
not
going
a
to say you
person
consented to
in
that?
this room that believes that Woodrow Wilson was a model citizen. Yes.
So you think taxation is this great evil of theft, one of the worst things a human can do to another person, deprive them of their personal property, and that's consensual?
It's interesting whenever somebody is on the defensive, this is how they act because they understand that they don't have
Asking
an
a question.
argument.
I didn't know
Go
Socrates
ahead.
was a great defender.
So, no, I mean, you're on the defensive right now because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a
No.
negative association between concepts
I usually,
that
when I'm
were
using an argument, I
consensually
start laughing at
created.
people
And
and making fun
so-
of their beliefs.
And so
calling them
the
childish and telling them they don't know what they believe. That's
oh,
usually what
because you're
happens when I'm
contradicting
listening.
yourself the whole time. So when you stop contradicting yourself,
I have not once contradicted my
okay.
belief of consent. I just
there we go again.
show me the contradiction in my
There
consent.
we go again. Uh-huh.
Oh, I agreed to be here because of violence.
Okay, then stop complaining about it. There you go.
No. You don't even have a social contract between your federal and your state governments, which is why smoking weed is simultaneously legal and illegal.
Actually,
Would
there
you-
is a social
Why? Okay,
contract
let me ask
in
you:
the Constitution.
would you smoke weed in front of a? Would you smoke weed in your own house?
I don't
No.
smoke weed. So.
No, yeah,
I
so-
don't smoke weed at all.
So, being there's only two people on this panel. No, if you're gonna smoke weed, you do it in your own house. Why? Because if you do it in front of a cop, that's a chance to get arrested.
Yeah.
Why am I doing it in my house? Because I believe it should be allowed. Why am I not doing it in front of the cop? Because I believe violence is going to be the result of doing it.
Well,
That's not consent.
private
Why?
property
No.
is 9/10 of the law.
No,
There you
so-
go.
but-
Okay, so
But here's what it comes down to. What I just described to you. If a woman were to have sex with a man because she knew that there is a chance he's going to beat me if I don't, that is called rape. If I obey a law because I know there's a chance I will be beaten if I don't, that is called consent. Now explain to me how that actually is.
So what if there's an ideological shift within one of these communions,
Mhm.
right? This voluntary little society,
Mhm.
everyone gets together and they
You either
voluntarily
make rape
decide
legal or you
that
make government
that the
illegal.
age of consent is 18, and then you have a bunch of 16-year-olds get together and decide that we don't want to adhere by that. We want to leave, and the adults say you can't consent to leaving. We are going to stop you from immigrating out. Right? Should you be able to stop a child from leaving that voluntary society?
Now that is a really good question, because when it comes to children, and it comes to the ages of consent, what has to go into it is whether or not the person can actually demonstrate the intellectual ability to care for themselves and consent to their they clearly demonstrate that they know actions have consequences.
Who decides and who enforces it when someone decides that this person does not have the agency?
If you have to, I would say that if you have to violently, physically restrain someone to keep them in a position, you should probably let them go. Now,
what if it's for the safety of another human being?
well, I guess we can lock down and shut down small businesses and make sure only things like Walmart stay open.
Well, no, Kavika specifically mentioned if it's for the safety of a other human
Well,
being.
when you're
Yeah,
saying when you're using the
singular.
safety of another
And
human
other
being
human
as
being.
justification, you
but
can
the
allow for a lot of
justification
things.
here is we're talking rape, we're talking these types of extremes that you
Yeah.
keep trying to utilize in order
And I'm
to
showing you
justify
the
your
extreme.
position.
Using the extreme
so
for
if
someone
you
else's
are
protection.
utilizing that extreme, is it okay for an enforcement group to use force in order to protect the person who is being raped?
Yes.
There we go. Which is true.
I'm
I
protecting
agree
that
with
person
Austin.
who has rights.
That person has rights, and
Yeah.
that is what the
I'm
law
sorry.
enforcement is doing. They're protecting that individual's
Why
rights.
does it? But you haven't explained why that has to be a public entity. Why that can't be a private entity that has to earn your money rather than is given your money.
Because we consented to it.
You're listening to the Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC featuring the Red Riff.
And again,
I'm literally telling you that the violence is the reason I agreed to these things, and that you're still saying that I'm consenting.
because you voluntarily chose to live here.
No, I said violence was the option.
You don't have to live here.
Yes, and there are
There
many
you go.
countries where violence would be the answer if I'm trying to get in.
You
But what
guys
you-
are arguing the wrong point.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Then lead us into the right point.
Right. No, you're not arguing the right point. You're arguing the right point. You stopped freaking consent situation. The thing is not you automatically consent. It's a social contract. There's no necessary action to be taken
They're not-
to consent. The natural use of public services and the agreement of using those services and being involved is what makes you into a social contract.
And you said that.
And the Constitution of the United States is a social contract.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I've said social contract more times than anything else.
So,
No, but
so
you're
black
not
people are still
defending it
3/5 of a person. So
What?
slavery. No, so that was the social contract that was signed. and
Okay,
it was changed.
well, and it was
Clearly
ultimately
changed it.
Yes,
And
Yeah,
we
so
changed
clearly
it
there wasn't a
because
lot
in
of
the
consent
social
involved.
contract we could change it.
It's because the
there was a
majority
lot
of
of
it,
consent involved.
because
Yeah,
the
if
majority
there's
of
certain laws you
individuals
don't like,
agree.
then you can change it.
There you go.
But you're
That's
not going to.
why
But you're
Article
not
5
going to
exists.
do that as part of the Libertarian Party not being involved at all.
Yes.
So for the slag segment, we're gonna feel bad.
What are we going to do for the last segments?
I don't know.
Well, you were going to say something, right?
Yeah, I forget what I was going to say.
Okay.
I was asking why a police force should be forcibly given money rather than earn money.
Oh, that's right.
That's the difference between a state and an anarchist, because there's no difference between a public and a private police force beside consent. That's the difference between a public and a private police. They perform the same duty. One cannot be punished.
Differences.
We vote and give consent to give them money out of taxes. That's what the levies are all about.
No, because there's nothing you can do when the police force is bad. That's your police force. You can't vote that police force away for a new police force.
You can vote them away. That's the beauty of the process.
Really? So they're able to unions
You
don't
have
protect
the
all of them?
ability to create a ballot initiative that can change over the police force.
To a private one? You can vote on a chief of police.
All right, so I guess with this last segment, let's all say if we've moved at all in our stance.
Not in the slightest.
And we'll try to each just summarize what we think government should look like structurally.
Okay.
And see if there's any differences amongst our group.
Yeah.
Final segment. Best music on KHNC.
It is. Hello and welcome back to Liberty Revolt in the Red Riff on 1360 KHNC. Bucky, you had something to say, didn't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we all summarize if we have moved in our position over the course of this conversation within 30 seconds, what you think was the most important point you'd like to get across. So I'll start with myself. I consider myself a conservatarian. Is what I mean by that is I believe that there is some legitimacy to government, but I think it is inherently corrupt and that it needs to be pulled in the direction of principled, hard libertarianism at all times. And I think that pull makes conservatism better.
Yeah, I can go. So, so as a right-wing populist, I still remain a right-wing populist after this conversation because I believe that the government and the state is legitimate, and it should be used to push socially conservative and other means that the country was founded upon to maintain morals. And I wasn't really persuaded by this conversation because I don't think we achieved a solid definition or consensus of what constitutes consent. We're gonna work this out. Yeah, we're gonna work this out sooner or later. But I think Austin, me, and Kavika still believe the social contract theory and whatnot. And I don't think Kevin provided that good of an explanation over the course of this radio show.
Okay. So I would be considered more like a constitutionalist Tea Party type Republican. And in this one, I'm listening in and I'm basically hearing the exact same thing over and over again. This is a social contract. We are living in a social contract that we voluntarily choose, and that the age of consent, when it is set, is what we abide by. And we have voluntarily chosen to live here. We have voluntarily chosen to follow this social contract. And that's what our law enforcement does because we consensually opted to pay into that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I am an anarcho-optimist. I believe that we, the people, have the ability to, provide our own security and safety, as was the case up until about the 1900s. Most Americans lived in rural areas that required that they defend themselves, and they did a pretty damn good job of it. And I still, to me, there is no legitimacy in a state whose entire motive is coercion, and whose entire way of gaining my support is through coercive means. And I'm glad I met some conservatives that are consenting to abortion, gay marriage, trans rights, and all this other stuff through their beautifully, wonderfully legitimate government.
Misrepresentation.
This has been Liberty Revolt with Red Riff on KHNC 1360.
1360khnc.com/shop.
I mean, if you're saying that the government is legit and you voluntarily consent to everything it does, that means you're voluntarily consenting to abortion. To all these other,
but about your question about the police, it never got answered. The difference between the private and public police force is that for a private force in Ancapistan, for example, only a handful of people determine its legitimacy, and there's nothing stopping another small group of people from making their own police force and challenging that legitimacy. So we need a centralized structure to determine what the single legitimate police force is to have order.
So in Ancapistan, everybody has the right to their own means of self-defense. As in, if I want to put a 50 cal on my house, I'm more than welcome to do that.
But now we're talking about collectivizing self-defense with the police force.
Yeah, no, I don't want to collectivize
go.
Yeah,
But that's exactly it.
So
That's exactly what you just said.
no, that is not exactly what I just said.
Everything
you haven't even let me finish what I was just saying. So let me put it this way: in a society where everybody has the guns and the means to defend themselves, why do you need a police officer to stop a mugging? Right? What do you actually need the police force for?
What's the rationale behind the Second Amendment?
Yeah, so we have a Second Amendment. So now I can put a 50 cal on my front door.
You may not be able to immediately defend yourself. It's not a requirement to have a
gun. But we have a government that doesn't, because the government is not.
No, the role of the police in this case, though, would be to find.
That's the problem that you're missing.
The goal of the police in this case would be to find the person who did and prosecute him.
There you go.
None of this. None of us agree.
Hey, see, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Norman. Thank you.
None of us agree that we all agree the